From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin in Mexico, where another leader from the Morena party has been killed. Professor Cudberto Porcayo from the ruling party in San José del Progreso was shot dead on Wednesday as he traveled in a car. This is the second killing of a member of the Morena party in the last 48 hours in Oaxaca. On January 1st, Alejandro Aparicio, mayor of Tlaxiaco, was also shot dead minutes after taking office. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has demanded that all public officials be transparent about their assets. The president added that officials who do not comply with the decision will not be part of his administration. He said that there is a moral obligation to comply with this demand. However, it is not a legal requirement. Massive anti-corruption demonstrations have been held in Peru. Citizens and social organizations are expressing their discontent with the conduct of the country's prosecutor's office. They are demanding the dismissal of Pedro Chavarri, the Attorney General. Public outcry has been growing following his attempts to derail the Odebrecht corruption case. Chavarri had dismissed two leading prosecutors before reappointing them. President Martín Vizcarra has urged legislators to consider a state of emergency in order to remove Chavarri.
We are here to express our public rejection of Attorney General Chavarri's efforts to remove prosecutors Rafael Vela and Jose Domingo Perez from the Lava Yato investigations. Even though Chavarri has reversed the decision because of institutional isolation, we think it is very important that citizens protest out on the streets.
In other news, the new Brazilian government has announced a purge of contractors. Jair Bolsonaro's chief of staff has announced that the administration is terminating contracts for companies that do not share the administration's right-wing ideology. The purge is expected to target companies that are perceived to be sympathetic towards the Workers' Party.
It doesn't make sense to have a government with a profile like ours to keep on people who support another way of thinking, another political system, another way to organize society.
And in return, the Workers' Party has condemned the first measures taken by this new government. Let's hear from our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Ignacio Lemos.
Following the first 24 hours after Jair Bolsonaro came to power, the Workers' Party has released a statement condemning the first measures taken by his government. Among the points mentioned were the measures announced by the Minister of Economy, Paulo Guedes, on privatizations, and particularly the privatization of Electrobras. This was a privatization which was not completed by the government of Michel Temer. Also, the reduction of social spending, where the first measure by the government of Bolsonaro was to increase the minimum wage by less than the amount earlier proposed for the minimum wage in 2019. This will be an increase to $260, which is $8 less than promised, an amount that may seem insignificant, but it's equivalent to a bag of beans or lentils or rice or corn for families with less financial resources, something that would have a large impact on the overall budgets of families. Other important points on measures taken by the Minister of Economy include the restructuring of the pension system. Paulo Guedes, of course, studied in the United States. He's a Chicago boy who also lived in Chile. There's speculation that the restructuring of the pension system may take the shape of the Chilean retirement system. The Workers' Party also rejected the policies regarding indigenous peoples in Brazil. The government's done away with the decision regarding the demarcation of land by the National Foundation for Indigenous Peoples, and now the policies are led by the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. This ministry is dominated by landowner interests, a sector which is an enemy of the indigenous peoples, a sector which has an interest in extractivist projects on the land of indigenous peoples. So this opens the way to a new period of genocide of indigenous peoples and an opening for mining projects throughout the Brazilian Amazon. This has also been denounced by the Workers' Party. In all, 17 policies were condemned. LGBT people have also been stripped of rights in a country where this section of the population suffers extremely high murder rates. The old Ministry of Human Rights, which has now been transformed into the Ministry of Women, Family and Human Rights, will no longer have within its remit the defense of LGBT people. It's been proposed by the Workers' Party, the Socialism and Liberty Party and the Communist Party Brazil that there must not be just opposition to proposals, but they must form an opposition which is critical actively of the government of Jair Bolsonaro as he wages social and economic attacks, and also as he wages attacks on opposition parties and on social movements.
Was Ignacio Lemos from Sao Paulo. And the Workers' Party is also calling for an investigation after police officers broke into the offices of several of their members in Congress. The party said that this was a worrying sign of the danger that lies ahead for Brazil's democracy under Bolsonaro's presidency. It added that the conduct of the police was not only a violation of the lawmakers' rights, but also a violation of Brazil's democracy. Colombian people are celebrating the carnival known as Blacks and Whites in the south of the country. Dressed in colors, people in the city of Pasto honored the Pachamama, the Mother Earth, on this second day of celebrations. This is the most important festivity in southern Colombia. This year, the festival's 10th anniversary is being celebrated as it was being declared an intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO. We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Welcome back. Guyana's House Speaker has declined to rule on whether the no-confidence motion was illegal. He has instead referred the matter to the courts. 2 weeks ago, the passing of this motion toppled the government. The legality of that vote and the conduct of the government MP who joined with the opposition have come into question. While addressing empty opposition benches, the Speaker informed that the matter is now out of his hands.
In the second instance, full, final and complete settlement of these issues by a court of competent jurisdiction will place beyond doubt any question which may exist and serve to give guidance to the Speaker and to the National Assembly for the future.
The Jamaican Ministry of Health announced an outbreak of dengue fever in the country. The ministry has allocated $250 million to combat the epidemic. Dengue fever is a mosquito-borne disease and can have deadly consequences. In Chile, a preventive evacuation has taken place for 35 houses due to a forest fire. In Santo Domingo, Valparaíso, more than 700 hectares have already been burned. The fire began on Wednesday, and despite the severity of the fire, no harm to residents has been reported. Argentinians defended their sovereignty over the Malvinas Islands on the anniversary of the British occupation, 186 years after Britain first took control of them. In a statement released on Thursday, the government reasserted its right to the territory.
On January 3, 1833, the British Empire arrived at the Falkland Islands, starting their occupation that still encroaches on Argentine sovereignty.
We know that 186 years ago, a British frigate usurped by force a territory that was not in dispute, which was in absolute legal possession of the Argentine territory, and with nothing else than force, they took over the territory. And since then, all negotiations that we've tried to establish have been denied, showing complete intransigence from the British government, without even the slightest intention to reason over the issue.
186 years have passed since, and as an act to repudiate the occupation and to deepen the fight for sovereignty, veterans of the Malvinas War protested in front of the Argentine Chancellery.
Our territory is reduced. There is a militarized neo-colonial plan that not only occupies our territory, but also threatens peace in the region. There is a fortress in the Malvinas Islands with military potential that not only threatens Argentina, but all the countries in the region.
Since Macri's government assumed power, a policy of not pursuing the Malvinas and accepting the sovereignty of the United Kingdom has been adopted.
We think that the cause of the Malvinas is a cause that symbolizes all the demands of the Argentine people in this conflict. Defending the Malvinas and our sovereignty is defending our natural resources, maritime concerns, and oil.
This will only end when the government lets another administration take over and reaffirm our sovereignty over the Malvinas Island, over all our land and the territory that belongs to us as a country.
Despite the neglect of the resolutions made by international organizations, which call upon both sides to resolve the dispute, and of the position adopted by Macri's government, the struggle for sovereignty over the Malvinas continues.
Despite U.S. hostility, Central American migrants are confident that they will gain entry to the United States. One of them, Rosa Castillo, had to leave Honduras after her home was burned down by members of a gang. She said that for her and other migrants, they are left without other options.
For me, Trump can close whatever he wants because it won't do anything. It's the same for any migrant. There is nothing that can stop us. If he closes it, then we will look for other options to enter the U.S. That's what it is. For us, nothing is impossible. Not for God, because we have a lot of faith. We can put up a wall and whatever he wants, but there is nothing impossible for us. I know that we're going to enter just because I know we're going to enter. He can put up all the walls he wants, as high as he wants them. We're going to enter, even if we have to dig under them.
A 12-year-old girl has been killed in the department of Meta in Colombia. During New Year's celebrations, the young girl's family noticed she was missing. They immediately informed the authorities, but her body was found later in a rural area. A man has been arrested in connection with this death. And according to official statistics, every 2 days a woman dies due to gender-based violence in Colombia. In many cases, authorities continue to blame women for being sexually assaulted.
Femicide is the intentional killing of women and girls based on their gender. And now, the Quinta de Bolivar Museum in Bogotá is hosting a special exhibition titled Femicide, Not One More Woman.
When we were organizing this exhibition of femicide, we thought it has a lot to do with what we do day to day here, making visitors reflect about a subject that at times we don't give the importance it deserves.
Over the last 5 years, about 6,000 women were murdered in Colombia. There's a new femicide case registered every 2 days.
Colombia has seen a surge in gender-based violence. Figures show that in 2017 and 2018, more than 2,000 cases were registered. Although many things have improved in the country, gender-based violence, especially within the family, remains a critical issue.
In terms of legislation, Colombia has made significant progress in strengthening the protection of women and punishing gender-based crimes. But the system still has a lot of flaws.
Police officers and civil servants continue to blame women for being sexually assaulted. Women's complaints are not handled appropriately or given the priority they need. This is an obstacle preventing women from coming forward about their experiences with sexual harassment or assault, and it makes it harder to prevent femicides.
Violence against women is an exercise of power which becomes justified and quickly normalized. Therefore, it is important to educate children about it from an early age.
Law 1257 includes a whole education program on sexual and gender-based violence, and there are decrees to ensure this is incorporated in the school curriculum. But unfortunately, schools no longer fulfill this requirement. There should be a whole curriculum in those topics, stretching from primary school to university.
In most cases, violence against women comes from their current or former intimate partners, and even from within their own families.
Less than a week into the new year, at least 2 women have lost their lives in Bolivia. The country has one of the highest femicide rates in South America. Our correspondent Freddy Morales has all the details.
While the murders of 2 women are still being investigated, law enforcement has already received reports of a third gender-based killing, which is said to have happened over the first couple days of the new year. These recent incidents have resurrected concern about untamed, widespread acts of violence perpetrated against women in Bolivia. In 2018, there were at least 100 recorded cases of gender-based violence. Many more also go unreported. Last November, a special multi-ministry commission headed by President Evo Morales was set up to tackle the growing femicide rate. The commission is tasked with developing a package of new legislation to strengthen the protection of women and children. President Morales has said that these laws need to be urgently enacted. Bolivia's rising femicide rate is mostly attributed to the very patriarchal social system that exists. Perpetrators face up to 30 years in prison for the murder of women.
That was Freddy Morales from La Paz. In Ecuador, the National Assembly has begun to debate the country's criminal laws, among them the decriminalization of abortion in cases of rape. Denise Herrera has more from Quito.
The decriminalization of abortion in cases of rape and conception without consent are one of the main issues currently under debate at the National Assembly. In light of this, several women's rights organizations have gathered outside the Assembly to show their support for safe and legal abortion in Ecuador.
We think this is an urgent reform. We defend the decriminalization of abortion since we believe that it is fundamental to guarantee women's rights. We believe that this is a first step towards the legalization of abortion in any case. This debate will hopefully protect women who have been victims of rape by giving them the choice of terminating their pregnancy.
We need that the National Assembly understands the responsibility they have in their hands. Right now, the law forces girls to have the babies of their rapists. A comprehensive law would not force them to have an abortion, but to have the right to choose.
The president of the Justice Commission and lawmaker from the Citizen Revolution Movement, Marcela Aguiñaga, opened the debate.
As president of the Justice Commission here in the National Assembly, I can't have my religious beliefs influencing the reforms we are debating. As president of this commission, I am fostering an open, diverse, and transparent debate.
Several feminist organizations and persons for and against the legalization of abortion appeared before the Assembly.
I propose to the Justice Commission to create a family ministry so that they can create plans of actions to foster a better environment at home. This can only be achieved through family counseling and specialized centers. We need to teach our sons to respect women and so that women don't wear those ridiculous green scarves.
This is not a controversial reality. It is a painful one that is lived by thousands of girls and women in Ecuador and around the world. We deserve the protection of the state. We live in a society that has normalized gender violence, including sexual violence. Just in these last 3 years, more than 14,000 rapes have been reported. And in the last decade, more than 20,000 girls under the age of 14 have given birth.
And outside the Assembly, persons for and against abortion have voiced their opinions.
I'm French. For me, abortion is a right. This is no longer a debate in Europe. It has become a fundamental right for women. They can choose above their body and decide their future.
We are against abortion because the Bible says, "Thou shalt not kill," especially not an innocent person.
The fight against corruption, policies to safeguard the sexual integrity of children, and the use of cannabis for medical use are some of the proposed reforms of Ecuador's criminal law.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. China is responding to the United States travel advisory saying it does not hold water. The U.S. warns citizens traveling to China should exercise increased caution due to, quote, arbitrary enforcement of laws. However, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that authorities have always impartially handled cases of foreigners. The two countries are seeing diplomatic tensions over trade conflicts.
China always welcomes foreign nationals, including U.S. citizens, and will protect their security and legitimate rights during their stay, including their rights of entry and exit. Of course, we hope foreign nationals in China can respect and abide by Chinese law.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is on an official visit to Ethiopia, Burkina Faso, Gambia, and Senegal from January 2nd to the 6th. The visit continues the 29-year tradition of choosing Africa as the first international visit by Chinese foreign ministers each new year. The minister is discussing implementation of the action plan adopted at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation with African leaders. Wang Yi is visiting the African Union headquarters on this trip and says that it has aligned the Belt and Road Initiative with the goals of the African Union's agenda.
As a continent, Africa is ready to interact with China. And through the AU, say, yes, we can approach China on this account. There is an agreement, a sort of agreement, that the African continent needs a lot of infrastructural development. And the best country in the world for infrastructural development happens to be China. So we have that common agenda, that you help us with the infrastructure, and we shall be happy.
At least 11 civilians have died in Syria after an international coalition strike led by the European Union. The attack took place in the northeast region of the country, controlled by the Islamic State group. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the number of victims could rise because there are people in critical condition. The NGO said more than 12,000 citizens have fled from these territories since last December. 6 people have been killed after a building collapsed in the capital of India. An explosion inside a fan production factory caused its ceiling to collapse. Several people were also injured. Eric Drouet was arrested in Paris this Wednesday. Drouet is one of the leaders of the Yellow Vest movement, and he's accused of organizing an undeclared protest. He had already been detained at a previous protest, and some say this arrest points to a hardening of the stance of the government of Emmanuel Macron on the demonstrations. The movement began back in October as a protest against a rise in fuel tax.
I am the son of a member of the French resistance, grandson of a prisoner of war. We fight for our fundamental rights in our country. We always fight, and today we realize that our fundamental rights are being trampled.
The European Union Commission has reaffirmed that the Brexit deal is final and will not be renegotiated. The Commission's deputy spokesperson, Mina Andriva, said no additional meetings will be held between European negotiators and their United Kingdom counterparts. She added that the UK will not get any other deal other than the one on the table.
Our solutions are on the table. We are ready to listen, but at this stage there is no further meetings, and the EU 27 leaders have been very clear that it will not be renegotiated.
Thailand is bracing itself for Tropical Storm Pabuk, which is expected to make landfall on Friday. The country's meteorological department has warned of heavy rain, strong winds, and rough seas in its southern beach resorts. Waves of up to 22 feet are predicted in some areas. Schools in coastal areas are to be closed, and thousands of people have taken shelter in evacuation centers. 2018 saw further international condemnation of Israeli occupation policies. On November 30 alone, the United Nations approved 6 resolutions against it. In December, they condemned the United States' unilateral recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. They also rejected the continued occupation of the Syrian Golan Heights. An Israeli military report revealed that the Gaza Strip was bombed from the air more than 865 times. And with that, we end our news brief, but the stories and many others, you can read them from our website at telesurenglish.net. And we're also on social media, so go ahead and follow us. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Enjoy our programming from